Hi, my name is Joseph Croney. I'm a program manager on the ASP.NET team. I focus on the page framework, which involves all the different controls that we use on ASP.NET, as well as the client-side script, data binding, and general issues that you use when building ASP.NET web applications. I'd like to talk to you about including client-side script in your web application. A lot of developers today don't realize how much rich client-side functionality you can offer, even when using our server-side based model for scripting. ASP.NET does do a lot of logic on the server. It allows you to hit the database, get information, data bind controls, but there's a lot of stuff you can do on the client as well, whether it's validation, popping up windows, offering rollovers for images. If you look at many web applications today, they're able to offer a rich experience to users using client-side code. When we designed ASP.NET, we had that in mind. So we added some powerful features that both page developers and control developers can take advantage of. I'd like to walk over to the whiteboard and take a look at some of those methods that are available to you as a developer for creating rich client-side functionality in your ASP.NET application. The first distinction which is important to make is whether you're the page developer or the control developer. As the page developer, the easiest way to include client-side script is to simply put it in line. Including it in line is as simple as just adding any other HTML markup to your page. Just as you would do in any HTML form, you can actually just include your script as you would any other JavaScript you'd have on the client. You can also add it programmatically, but that's more common to do if you're a control developer. As a control developer, you're going to want to register script blocks. There are several methods available on page for actually registering your script block. It's important to know which one to use depending on the script you're trying to execute on the client. The first type of script block is called register client script block. And you pass in two parameters, a key and a script. The key is used to uniquely identify that script in your application. You may go and register several client script blocks. One might be for validation, one might be doing for some sort of UI, whether it's a rollover image or a pop-up window. That key identifies that script in case you want to later on re-register it or write over what you've already registered. The script parameter to the register client script block method allows you to actually provide the script. That's where you'd actually put some kind of a string that would include the script you want to execute on the client. That could be as simple as a hello world pop-up window. Another important thing to realize is when during the page lifecycle you want to actually register your scripts. In my example here, I have the register client script block being executed in pre-render. It's essential that you register any client script blocks before you get to the render method. This is because many controls may rely on what client script blocks have been registered, and when we go ahead and actually decide to write these out to the client, we have to make sure that that has been registered before render. You can certainly do it earlier in the page lifecycle, whether you did it in init or in load, but in general we've found that many control developers have chosen to use pre-render as the place to render their client-side script. As I mentioned before, there's a couple other methods you can use for including client-side script. Register client script block is really used just for generically inserting script into your code. You might have a function that just gets executed and called from a button click. There's also other methods that allow you to have other specific scenarios. For example, we have register startup script that also takes a key and a string parameter, and what that does is it's actually injected at the end of the page. So whatever script you put in there will get executed as the page is loaded. An example of where you might want to do that is a pop-up window. If you want to make a pop-up window appear once the page is loaded, all you have to do is register a startup script, and in your client-side script string block, you can actually have that code. The final type of register statement we have is the register on submit statement. What happens when you use the on submit registering statement, you can actually add code which will be executed when ASP.NET determines it's time to submit back to the server. That might occur when you have a button that causes a post back. It might occur when you have an auto post back enabled on a control. The key for using the onSubmit statement is that we'll actually call that method when the page decides to submit back to the server. The final thing that you may want to take a look at when using client-side script in your ASP.NET application is the client ID property on control. Oftentimes, you will have a control ID you've used to associate with a specific control on the server side. That's where I might have a label, and on that label will be a run@server tag as well as an ID property. That ID property actually does not have to be unique within the page. Because of that, we generate a client ID property for every control. So every control that you use on your page will actually get generated a client ID property, and that will uniquely identify that control on the client. For example, if you want to have a script that did some validation schema on a text box, you could include in your script the dependency for the client ID of that text box, and then use the client ID to reference the contents of that text box when you wanted to validate it on the client. If you tried to use the plain ID property, it wouldn't work, because we don't just send down the ID property to the client, we use that on the server. That's really a good overview of what we do in terms of client-side script inside ASP.NET. We want to make sure that developers are continuing to provide rich client-side experiences even while taking advantage of the rich programming model ASP.NET provides on the server.